This is the May Pavo Real Masterclass called Designing Compelling Characters. This is a comprehensive guide for creating three-dimensional characters that captivate readers through emotional depth and realism. Authors emphasize that compelling protagonists and villains must possess distinct motivations, relatable flaws, and detailed backstories to drive a narrative forward effectively. Practical techniques are suggested to achieve this, including conducting character interviews, maintaining detailed profiles, and observing real-world nuances to add unique traits. The texts also highlight the importance of character-driven plotting, where a figure's internal needs and external obstacles dictate the story's direction. Ultimately, the collection serves as a manual for moving beyond flat archetypes to create living, breathing individuals who feel authentic to the audience. This holistic approach ensures that every person in a story, from the lead hero to the background extra, serves a purposeful role in the overall world. So, sit back, grab a donut, and wash it down with a brew, and enjoy this month's presentation.
Imagine you're just staring at a blank page.
Oh, the absolute worst feeling.
Right, it really is. And you have just a few hundred pages to completely hack into a stranger's brain.
Yeah, to convince them that a totally manufactured entity is real.
Exactly. Something made of literally nothing but ink and paper, but you have to make them believe it has a heartbeat, a history and a soul.
It's a massive undertaking.
It really is. So today on this custom-tailored deep dive, we are unpacking the secret psychological architecture of fictional people.
Which is such a cool topic.
It's so fascinating. We have this incredible stack of sources to pull from today, including guides, blogs, and essays from authors like Mike Hillsgrove, Karen Rose, and Carrie Hudson.
Some really heavy hitters in the writing world.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this, because creating a character is, well, it's basically a masterclass in psychology.
Yeah, 100%.
It's all about manipulating empathy.
Yeah.
Making an imaginary person feel so tangible that they could just step off the page and pull up a chair next to you.
What's fascinating here is that the mechanics of building these imaginary people, they actually expose the underlying machinery of human nature.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, the blueprints that authors use to manufacture a fake human, they highlight exactly how real humans process things like motivation, trauma, identity.
Like reverse engineering a person.
Exactly. We are basically looking at reverse engineered psychology.
Which is wild. And the intuitive starting line for reverse engineering a human seems like it would be, the human themselves.
You would think so, yeah.
But diving into these sources, there is this fundamental split on the very first step of the process.
The chicken or the egg debate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We have author Mike Hillsgrove, and he plants his flag firmly in the camp of world design first.
Yeah, his argument relies heavily on environmental determinism.
Right, the idea that you absolutely cannot know who a person is until you understand the universe that formed them.
Hillsgrove views characters almost as symptoms of their environment.
Symptoms, yeah, that's exactly it. But then you have Scottish author Carrie Hudson, and she wrote the brilliantly titled "Tony Hogan Bought Me an Ice Cream Float Before He Stole My Ma."
Such an incredible title.
It's so good, but she operates on the exact opposite polarity. She argues that every story she touches originates from a single, isolated character.
Just completely character first.
Yeah. She dissects who that specific figure is, and only then does she construct a world capable of holding them.
Both methodologies are really attempting to solve the exact same atmospheric equation.
How so?
Well, the crucial element isn't necessarily which one comes first. It's the immutable friction between the two.
The push and pull.
Right. The character and the environment have to exert pressure on one another. There is a specific example in the sources, actually, about setting a narrative in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, right, because Nashville operates with a very specific, cultural and linguistic rhythm.
The colloquialism.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant, highly educated locals there might utilize colloquialisms or slang that an outsider, a Yankee as the author actually terms it, might misinterpret as uneducated.
Which is a huge trap for a writer.
Oh, a massive one. If an author drops a character into Nashville without understanding that specific linguistic pressure, the character just registers as fraudulent.
Right, they don't feel real.
Exactly. The environment acts as an antagonist or a comfort zone or a mirror. I mean, publishers frequently issue rejection letters citing a lack of sense of place.
Because an unmoored character has nothing to push back against.
You need that friction.
It sounds less like building a house and finding a tenant and more like like designing a terrarium.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, like you establish the climate, the predators, the constraints, and those environmental factors dictate whether the organism inside evolve, a thick hide, camouflage, or venom.
And if you flip it to Hudson's method, you find a fascinating organism first, and then you have to build a terrarium perfectly calibrated to force that specific creature to react.
Right. And you, the listener, if you examine the unwritten rules of your own workplace or like the specific dynamics of your family structure, you realize you are constantly adapting.
Oh, absolutely. You adapt your vocabulary, your defenses, your behavior, just to survive your specific terrarium.
We are all adaptations to the spaces we inhabit.
It's so true.
So once the organism is in the terrarium, it needs a label.
The name.
Yes. And the blogs in our sources offer some hilariously blunt logistical rules for naming characters.
Starting with pronounceability, I imagine.
Exactly. If a reader's internal monologue stumbles over like 14 consonants every time the protagonist opens a door, the cognitive immersion completely shatters.
It pulls you right out of the story.
Right. But beyond just being readable, the name has to function as a psychological anchor. There's this pretty gritty example about a story involving white slavery.
Oh, right, the Tatiana example.
Yeah. The author points out that an unhappy stripper named Tatiana does infinitely more heavy lifting than an unhappy stripper named Jane.
That is just pure sociolinguistic hacking.
Sociolinguistic hacking, I love that term.
Well, it's true. Tatiana comes preloaded with reader biases, cultural schemas, phonetic weight.
Right, you instantly picture someone specific.
Exactly. The author isn't building a personality from a state of absolute zero. They are basically hijacking the reader's pre-existing neural pathways.
It's so efficient.
It is.
Yeah.
A name is basically a microburst of exposition. It implies socioeconomic status, geographical origin, parental expectations, all without the author having to write a single paragraph of backstory.
Which is amazing, but it also turns naming into a complete logistical nightmare.
Oh, keeping track of them all.
Yes. One blog features this confession from an author who simply grabbed a reference book, selected first and last names completely blindly, and just kept writing.
Oh no, that's a recipe for disaster.
It was. 4 months later, a reader pointed out they had named one character Richard Curtis and another character Curtis Richard in the exact same manuscript.
That is hilarious. But yeah, completely confusing for the reader.
Right. To fix the continuity disaster, this author resorted to scavenging names from like Maxim and FHM magazines.
That works, I guess.
Eventually, they had to rely on internet algorithms just to populate a 68-character cast list without redundancies.
That's a huge cast.
It really is. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once the name is locked, the physical rendering begins.
Putting a face to the name.
Yes. And this is the exact moment the creator's subconscious starts leaking onto the page.
The accidental autobiography.
Exactly.
The conscious mind of the writer is so consumed with plotting and pacing, it leaves the subconscious completely unguarded. So they end up processing their own lived experience through their avatars.
And Karen Rose is the absolute perfect case study for this.
Oh, with Deacon Novak.
Yes. So she has a character in her Cincinnati series named Deacon Novak. And visually, Deacon is incredibly striking.
Doesn't he have the white hair?
Bone white hair and heterochromia, 2 different colored eyes, one blue, one brown.
Very distinct.
Very. And Rose introduced him in an early book, fully admitting she had absolutely no idea why her brain assigned him those intense genetic traits. It was just pure instinct.
Wow.
But then, 2 books later, when she finally outlined his specific narrative, she realized Deacon carried the exact same rare genetic syndrome that she herself has.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly reveals how authors use fiction to process internal reality.
Subconsciously, yeah.
But what anchors Deacon Novak for the reader isn't really the visual aesthetic of the white hair or mismatched eyes.
It isn't.
No, because readers are notoriously selective in their imaginations. An author can spend 3 pages describing a blonde protagonist, and half the audience will still picture a dark-haired hero.
That is so true. I do that all the time.
Right. What actually binds the character to reality is the justification for the trait.
Oh, the why.
Exactly. Deacon's appearance is tethered to a genetic reality, a familial history. It has structural integrity.
It makes sense. So a loaded name and a structurally sound physical description, well, they still only give you a beautiful algorithm.
Just a surface-level shell.
Right, they just execute their primary function. To make them 3-dimensional, the sources emphasize the 6-point profile.
Which goes through name, background, job, relationships, history, And then the big one.
The psychological engine. Wants versus needs.
The distinction between the two is basically the entire basis of human conflict.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so a want is entirely conscious. It is the external goal. I want to catch the killer, or I want to get the promotion.
Right, the thing they are actively chasing.
Exactly. But the need is entirely subconscious. It is the internal void. Like, I need to forgive myself for my sister's death, or I need to prove I am not a failure like my father.
Oh, wow.
The friction between that conscious want and the subconscious need is exactly what generates a compelling narrative.
And the fuel source authors use for that engine seems to be almost universally rooted in trauma.
Oh, heavily.
I mean, the character backstories in these sources are brutal. You look at Harry Potter, a neglected, abused orphan locked in a literally cupboard.
A classic example.
Then you examine Karen Rose's characters. Val Sorensen from Beneath the Dark Waters is a bodyguard, but she's also a survivor of sexual assault, estranged from her entire family, and navigating the fallout of her sister being murdered.
Just layer upon layer of grief.
And Kaj Cardozo, a prosecutor single-handedly raising a son after watching his wife die of cancer.
They are foundational psychological wounds.
But do they have to be? I mean, do characters actually require Batman-level parental tragedies to warrant a book?
Fair question.
It just seems like authors mine the absolute deepest pits of misery just to force a reaction. Can't an emotionally stable person with a completely normal childhood be compelling?
Well, think about it. A perfectly adjusted person with a normal childhood who experiences an inciting incident usually reacts with perfect logic.
Right.
If they find a dead body, they call the police, they go home, and they schedule an appointment with a therapist.
And the story terminates in chapter 2.
Exactly. Massive trauma isn't just theatrical misery. It is a mechanism to fracture that logic. It generates deep, actionable flaws.
Okay, give me an example of how that fracture works in practice.
Look at Mike Hillsgrove's character, Edith, from his Interpol series.
Okay.
Edith is not a traumatized orphan. She is a blonde Australian Valley girl, highly educated, but she's the daughter of a billionaire porn producer.
Wait, really? A Valley Girl spy?
Yeah. Her conscious want is to be a Jane Bond type of spy, largely inspired by her father's in Italy.
That is a wild background for an Interpol agent.
But that's the point. The cognitive dissonance of her background operating in the rigid world of international law enforcement results in severe flaws.
What kind of flaws?
She battles a heavy drinking habit and a compulsive need for sex, which constantly jeopardizes her career.
So the flaw acts as the unpredictable variable.
Exactly. Flaws and vices, whether it is Edith's destructive coping mechanisms, or maybe a vampire who has a debilitating allergy to garlic, or even just a character whose singular, irrational pet peeve is the sound of a math teacher grinding her teeth. These flaws shatter the algorithm.
Perfection is two-dimensional.
Completely. A flaw forces a character to make desperate, irrational choices that actually drive a plot forward.
Okay, so if a flaw is the crack in a character's armor, the plot requires a force designed specifically to exploit that exact crack.
The antagonist.
Exactly. That's the true function of the antagonist. Hillsgrove points out that the villain is the actual instigator of the narrative.
Right, the era of the mustache-twirling cartoon villain stroking a white cat in a swivel chair that's completely dead.
The antagonist is the load-bearing wall of the plot. Their motivation must be as rigorously justified as the protagonists.
Because nobody operates under the assumption that they are the villain of their own story.
Nobody. And the antagonist doesn't even have to be a sentient being.
Oh, right, like in nature.
Yeah. The sources reference Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. The antagonist is literally just the sea itself.
It isn't malicious, it's just completely indifferent.
And that sheer indifference is the perfect bespoke pressure test for Santiago's deep, subconscious need for relevance and triumph in his old age.
That's a great way to frame it.
But bridging the space between the protagonist's need and the antagonist's pressure brings up this completely unexpected layer in the sources. The victims.
The collateral damage.
Yes. There's a technique in the sources that I honestly found deeply unsettling.
The missing poster one.
Yes. So a crime novelist realized they were becoming completely numb to their own body count.
Which happens when you write that much murder.
Right. Writing "she died" just felt cheap and sensational. So to understand the devastating psychological weight their protagonists would actually carry, they utilized the missing poster technique.
It's so intense.
They bought glossy local society magazines, cut out photographs of real people who matched the killer's victim profile, and researched the exact formatting used by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They physically manufactured legitimate missing posters with stats and last seen locations and pinned them up in their office to stare at while writing.
The emotional toll of surrounding yourself with manufactured grief like that is just immense.
But it works.
It does. It prevents the violence from becoming just a sterile plot device.
But I have to ask, isn't that just sort of self-indulgent trauma mining for the author? Like, why go to the trouble of printing actual posters and putting them in a dossier when you are a professional writer with a perfectly capable imagination?
Because imagination naturally insulates you.
Hey, I mean.
Your brain will instinctively protect you from the true horror of a concept if it remains abstract. Tangibility bypasses the author's psychological defenses.
Oh, that makes sense.
When a victim is just a name on a screen, their death is just a stepping stone for the hero.
Yeah.
But when their face is pinned to the wall staring back at you, they demand respect.
So, what does this all mean? When we apply that respect for the collateral damage to our own lives, when we truly sit with our own failures, the relationships that didn't survive our own terrariums, the losses we endure, it creates a much richer narrative.
It grounds us.
You aren't just fighting the daily antagonists, you're honoring the weight of what was lost along the way.
That depth of field is exactly what separates a sterile narrative from a visceral one.
Absolutely.
But it introduces the final hurdle. An author has constructed the terrarium, they've hacked the sociolinguistics with a name, mapped the conscious wants and subconscious needs, and designed an antagonist to exploit the specific flaws.
The ultimate test.
Right. How does the creator actually test the structural integrity of the psychological bundle before committing to a 300-page manuscript?
You subject them to a hostile interrogation.
Brutal, but necessary.
Hillsgrove's method is to literally visualize sitting across from the character in a dive bar or in an interrogation room while they await bail.
Really putting them under the lights.
He forces out 10 solid pages of pure dialogue, demanding the character confess their absolute deepest secrets, just to see if their voice holds up under pressure.
It forces the subconscious to speak.
It really does. And the questions these authors hurl at their creations are incredibly specific. They bypass all the standard resume questions.
What kind of questions?
They ask things like, what specific smells trigger memories of your childhood home?
Oh, sensory details.
Yeah. What is the fatal flaw that will inevitably ruin your life? Are you fundamentally good or fundamentally evil? And my personal favorite, what is inside your refrigerator right now?
The refrigerator question is a brilliant psychological diagnostic.
Why the fridge?
Think about it. Tell an author what is in the fridge, and they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
A fridge containing only a half-empty bottle of expensive champagne and expired mustard? That indicates a vastly different socioeconomic status, mental health baseline, and daily routine than a fridge meticulously stocked with color-coded, macro-labeled meal prep.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly revealing.
Right. One implies chaotic avoidance, while the other implies a rigid, desperate need for control.
That is so true. Carrie Hudson has a different crucible, though. She uses what I'd call the Tesco test.
The Tesco test.
Yeah, it's basically the literary equivalent of introducing a new partner to your hypercritical family and just holding your breath.
Always a stressful situation.
Hudson says, the character's psychology is structurally sound when you can drop them into a wildly incongruous situation and predict their exact behavioral response.
Like where?
Well, can you place this character in aisle 4 of a Tesco supermarket?
Right, or like rural Brazil.
Exactly. Or drop them onto the ice at a figure skating championship. If you know precisely how they will physically react, what internal monologue will run through their head, and how they will try to escape, you have engineered a human.
And if you hesitate, you don't have a human. You just have a collection of traits waiting for instructions.
Well, that's but true.
There's an evolutionary step to this testing, actually, mentioned by a critique group known as the BMWs.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah. One author was struggling with character bleed. Her cast of friends and lovers were starting to sound like the exact same person.
Which is so easy to do.
The critique group emailed her one of those exhaustive 100-question personality surveys that used to circulate on the early internet.
Oh, the ones designed to test how well you know your best friend.
Exactly those.
Yeah.
But instead of the author answering, she forced her characters to fill out the survey in their own voices.
That is brilliant.
She had them interrogate each other about their shared secrets and resentments. It completely calcified their distinct cognitive boundaries.
Wow.
And this raises an important question about how we process the reality around us.
How do you mean?
Well, when you look at the barista, or the coworker down the hall, or even members of your own family, do you know them well enough to pass the Tesco test?
That is a tough question.
Or do we largely interact with people as flat, non-playable characters, NPCs, who only exist to facilitate our own conscious wants?
We are all suffering from main character syndrome.
Exactly.
We assume the intricate machinery of wants, needs, and internal lies only exists within us, and everyone else is just a two-dimensional extra waiting for their cue to speak.
The grueling psychological excavation these authors perform to build empathy for people who do not exist, that is the exact same work we actively avoid doing for the real people standing right in front of us.
Man, that hits hard. We have covered a massive amount of psychological ground today.
We really have.
We analyzed the friction of world building versus character-first design and how our environments act as terrariums. We decoded the sociolinguistic hacking of a name.
And how an author's subconscious DNA bleeds into those physical traits.
Right. We dissected the mechanical necessity of trauma to shatter perfect logic, the precise function of antagonists, the devastating respect of the missing posters, and the grueling interrogations required to pass the Tesco test.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of a human soul. These authors dedicate years to engineering a person from scratch, knowing every dark corner of their mind, mapping every subconscious need. But the ultimate paradox is that the moment the book is published, the character no longer belongs to the creator.
They belong to the reader.
They belong entirely to the reader's imagination, filtered through the reader's own biases and experiences, which leaves us with a provocative reality.
Let's hear it.
If we subconsciously rebuild every fictional character we read, and we heavily filter the real people in our lives through our own assumptions, are you ever truly interacting with the real person sitting across from you? Or are you just interacting with the fictionalized character you've written for them in your own head?
Wow. That is a reality worth questioning. You, the listener, keep examining the terrariums you live in, keep looking for the three-dimensional depth in the people around you, and as always, keep digging deep.
In the El Paso library, writers gather round, have a reel they call us, stories to be found. Pens on paper flowing, ideas come alive, words that paint a picture in our minds, they thrive. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to flight. From fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits do align. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to fly. Fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits do align. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to flight. real, they call us, stories to be found. Pens on paper flowing, ideas come alive. Words that paint a picture, in our minds they thrive. Have real, we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to fly. From fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits still align. Real, we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear,